Part 1.
You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. You will hear a woman inquiring about a job vacancy. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hi there. Welcome to the Job Centre. How can I help?
Good morning. I'm here to inquire as to whether you have any jobs available at the moment.
Yes, we have several available. What kind of job is it that you're looking for?
Well, I'll take any part-time jobs I can get. I'm really strapped for cash at the moment.
OK. Bear with me while I have a browse on our system. Here we are. We have 3 vacancies at the moment, all involving quite different roles.
That sounds promising. What are they?
The first one is for a post as a receptionist. It says here that experience in reception or general administration is preferred, but not essential. Have you worked on a reception desk previously?
No, I haven't. I had a baby quite young, and so I have very little work experience. Could you tell me a few more details?
Yes, of course. The job will be to mainly provide quality customer service, both over the phone and in person. When customers are waiting, you will be expected to provide them with refreshments and ensure they have a first-rate experience.
I think I could manage that, and I'm a very friendly person.
That's great.
Do you have any information about the hours involved?
It says here that you will be expected to work several early mornings, 4 days a week.
Any other requirements?
Yeah, you'll have to go through a couple of weeks of unpaid training before qualifying for the post.
I don't know if I would be able to fully commit to that. Did you say it's 4 days per week?
Yeah, it says here 4 days a week, with another day off per week when requested in advance. It also explicitly states that at least one of your working days must fall on a weekend.
I'll have to think about that and talk to my babysitter.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Are there any other roles beginning later in the day?
Yes, there's an advertisement here for a driver. It says you'll need a clean and valid UK driver's licence, with absolutely no exception.
No problems there. I passed my test first time, and have never received any points.
It also explicitly states that you must be over 25 and have been driving for at least 6 years.
That sounds quite exciting. Is there any more information?
Yep, it says here that working hours are flexible and the employers are happy to work within your personal schedule since they employ multiple drivers.
That's great.
The employers ask for a commitment to either mornings 5 days per week, evenings 5 days per week, or 3 full working days per week.
I'm sure I can handle all that without a problem.
As well as driving the employers to and from work, they will ask you to perform various duties on their behalf, such as collecting the grocery shopping and picking their children up from school.
Do they need me to work a day on the weekend as well?
No, it says here that they only require you to work on weekdays, not weekends.
That sounds interesting.
Okay, there's only one more left, another customer service related post. It looks like it requires you to work short hours, quite late at night, so it might not be suitable for you. Do you want to hear about it anyway?
Yeah, can't do any harm.
Okay, so it's a post for a cashier in a cinema in the centre of town. I'm sure you've been to the cinema a few times, so you can guess what kind of role it would be. They're quite short and late shifts, between 5:30 and 10:30 most nights, with slightly longer shifts on Friday and Saturday nights.
Can you tell me what the job involves?
Yes, sure. It says that you'll be required to sell and dispense tickets and provide refreshments. Also, they ask that you be quick on the computers, since you'll also need to take bookings over the phone, but you'll receive basic training for that.
Do they need me to work weekdays as well?
Well, it says here that if you request at least a fortnight in advance, they will grant you a day off on Mondays, but never on a weekend.
I'll think it over and let you know later. Thanks for all your help.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a representative from an organisation called Connection giving a talk about a homestay organisation. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Thank you all for coming to my talk this evening. It's nice to see so many people in the audience. For those of you who don't know very much about Connection, let me start by giving you some background information about it. Connection is a British organisation that facilitates homestays all over the globe. This organisation prides itself on matching tens of thousands of host families with guests every single year, allowing travellers to discover a country's culture in a way like no other. Homestays are ideal for both travellers and homeowners, enabling intercultural exchanges and the development of lifelong friendships while providing travellers with often discounted accommodation costs and host families with a steady income from the comfort of their own homes. The homestay experience is particularly popular with university exchange students looking for a more genuine insight into their country of choice and an unrivaled opportunity to develop their language skills. The homestay experience is truly unique and once in a lifetime, and one that you will likely remember for the rest of your lives. It is important to note, however, that some people will find it difficult to adapt to the new country, with many enduring what is known as culture shock. Connection's advice for those suffering from culture shock is to go out and make as many friends as possible, no matter how difficult you may find it. Friends are guaranteed to help you feel more integrated as part of the local society and show you some great places to hang out. At first, it might seem extremely challenging to overcome the language barrier between you and your host family. However, you will find that you quickly overcome this and develop a very close and almost familial relationship. Many of our travellers have suggested that they have found discussing their hobbies and other interests with their host families is the best way to overcome any barriers, since you are more likely to find something you share in common. For example, you might find that you are both passionate about football and end up playing in the local field every week. One of our guests undertaking a homestay in a rural area of the UK told us that she and her host now take a Tai Chi class together upon a hilltop at sunrise, calling the experience absolutely breathtaking. After the first few weeks, you will find your understanding of the people around you and their culture deepens by leaps and bounds, and you will soon become one of the locals. Our hosts in over 140 countries turn a location into a culture, time into experience, and strangers into friends.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
So how can you find out about applying for a homestay? The best way would be to visit Connection's website, www.connection.com, and contact one of their friendly advisors for more information. Once you have confirmed your interest in the service, we would strongly advise that you remain in close contact with the registration office, which will send you several emails keeping you up to date with potential matches in your country of choice. Once registered, Connection will require you to send various documents and will act as an intermediary between you and the host family prior to final confirmation and payment. During this stage, Connection will ask you to provide 2 photos, one for the host family and the other for our own records. Please ensure that you sign the back of each photo. Due to the nature of the service Connection provides, security is an absolute must, and they will ask you to send in photocopies of your passport, birth certificate, and a bank statement as confirmation of your identity. On receipt of these documents, the official process will begin and your bank account will be debited for the initial deposit of £200. If you haven't received any acknowledgement confirming receipt of these documents from us within 7 working days, please contact the main office. As I mentioned before, due to the nature of the organisation, Connection operates a meticulous screening process, and all applicants will undergo an interview in our head office in London, with exceptions made in extreme circumstances. After your interview, it may take us several weeks to carry out the decision process, so please be patient with us. If you would like a fast-track service, please indicate this on your application, and we will notify you of the additional charges. Finally, once we have come to a result about your application, you will receive a decision in the post. If you do not receive an offer of placement, we will refund your deposit within 7 working days.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear an interview with a soil scientist about home composting.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25.
Good evening. Tonight we're taking a look at home composting, and here to tell us all about it, we have in the studio Dr. Marianne Rottenberg, a soil scientist from the Institute of Environmental Integrity. Good evening, Dr. Rottenberg.
Good evening.
Tell me, why is home composting such a hot topic at the moment?
Well, we need to recycle more of our domestic waste because we are rapidly running out of landfill space. But primarily it's to cut down on harmful greenhouse gases emitted from landfill sites. Also, compost is the natural way to improve the fertility of the soil for people interested in growing their own food or organic gardening in general.
Yes, I think most people understand the benefits of compost for the soil and also the landfill problem, but aren't greenhouse gases produced just the same when waste is left to decay in the garden?
This is a common misconception. When waste is properly composted at home, it generates far less greenhouse gases than it would in a landfill site. There's also the vehicle pollution to consider when waste from millions of homes has to be transported to these sites.
I realise that, but can you explain how home composting is preferable to decomposition in landfill?
Well, composting is a biological process that requires favourable conditions for microorganisms, mostly bacteria, to survive and multiply. That means sufficient oxygen, moisture, warmth, and the correct acidic base balance. It's also important to use the correct blend of organic materials and to agitate the compost to allow the air to circulate. This does not happen in landfill.
Yes, many people are unsure as to exactly what is meant by organic materials and what they can and cannot compost. Can you give examples, please?
Well, organic means containing carbon, but in composting terms it refers to anything that was at one time living. It can be divided into green material and brown material. The greens are kitchen scraps such as vegetable, salad and fruit waste, old flowers and grass cuttings. These are a good nitrogen source. The browns include things like leaves, crushed eggshells, egg boxes, twigs and small branches, and shredded cardboard or paper, which provide the carbon.
And do these brown and greens need to be mixed together?
Normally it's more of a layering process. Each layer of greens, that's food waste, is covered by a layer of browns, for example leaves.
Right, and are there any food substances that won't compost?
Yes, most definitely. Don't add meat, fish, bones, dairy products, or any kind of cooking oil because these are not very biodegradable and will slow the composting process down.
Fine, I get the general idea. Thank you, that was most illuminating.
Before you hear the rest of the interview, you have some time to read questions
26 to 30.
One of our listeners would like to know more about the practical aspects of home composting. Can you say more about this, please?
Yes, certainly. There's more than one method of composting, but a popular way is to use a ready-built wooden frame or a plastic composting bin, made from recycled plastic, of course. It can be sited anywhere in the garden or placed near to the house for convenience if you wish. Ideally, it should have a trapdoor at the bottom to access the finished compost. The process takes about 6 to 9 months.
That's quite long, isn't it?
Yes, so it's often a good idea to have 2 composters, with one full that can continue the process whilst you start the other bin. And the one thing, it's best to keep the kitchen scraps in a small plastic container with a sealed lid. An old ice cream carton is suitable.
And how about the garden waste? Is that kept outside in another container?
Yes, but it doesn't need to be a container with a lid. Nothing sophisticated. Any enclosure in the garden will do. Just somewhere to keep leaves, really. Start with a layer of these at the bottom, and then add a layer of kitchen scraps on a daily basis, topped off with another layer of leaves and twigs, and so on, in roughly equal measures.
Now, I know some people have concerns about attracting rodents and family pets. Is this really a problem?
Well, it can be, but it's less so if your bin has a lid or the kitchen scraps are well covered with leaves and twigs.
And what if there are not enough leaves in your garden?
Crunched up newspaper and shredded card can provide an alternative source of carbon, and they also increase the aeration of the compost.
Well, thank you once again, Doctor.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear an undergraduate tutor talking about academic essays and referencing.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Mike Roberts, one of the Institute's undergraduate tutors. I'm going to talk briefly about the correct way to set out an academic essay and also how to reference it. More details on submitting your essay and how to reference academic work generally, including research papers, can be found in the College Handbook. That's the Red Book. You should all have a copy. These guidelines, or rules really, must be adhered to if you want to avoid losing marks. 5% of the total mark is available for correct referencing, which could mean the difference between a pass and a fail. OK, let's start with the page setup. The margins should be 1 inch, each side with 1¼ inches at the top and bottom. Now, these are automatically chosen to suit the printer, so there's no need to alter the normal template. The text must be double-spaced to enable the tutor to add comments either above or below the text, and also to facilitate reading. Choose a 12-point Times New Roman font for your essay. It must be typed and justified. Nothing is to be handwritten. OK? Don't indent the paragraphs and don't add additional blank lines between the paragraphs. It makes the essay look longer than it really is, but this will not fool the examiner. Now, your essay will be marked and assessed anonymously to avoid any discrimination. So make sure your candidate number appears in the right-hand corner of every page in the top margin, the header. But your name must not appear anywhere on the final essay. Right, any questions so far? All this is in your handbook, by the way. I'll just mention the word count. To avoid being penalised, don't exceed the word count by more than 10%. So a 3,000-word essay shouldn't overrun by more than 300 words. Or, to put it another way, A 3,000-word essay should not be any longer than 3,300 words. If you write any more words than this, the examiner will not be obliged to read them. Don't write anything less than 3,000 words though, okay? Right, I'd like to move on to referencing. Well, why do we need to do it? Does anybody know? Firstly, citing references in an essay lends support to your own idea and arguments. It's important to substantiate them. Secondly, in academic research, correct referencing enables other researchers to locate the source of the material so that they can study it and check it. Finally, by acknowledging who wrote the work, you cannot be accused of taking another author's ideas as being your own, which is plagiarism. Now, some people might argue that there are no original ideas out there, that whatever you write, somebody else will already have written, in which case you would end up having to reference all your written work. This is not true. You do not have to reference facts that are well established and in the public domain. So, for example, you can safely state that Sigmund Freud was the founder of psychiatry without having to reference it because it's a widely accepted fact. But what you cannot do is state that Freud was the first person to study the dreams of childhood without quoting the relevant text. Okay, I hope I've made that clear enough. We use the Harvard system of referencing here. It's an author-date system. So in the body of the essay, you would write in parenthesis the author's surname without the first name, followed by a comma, followed by the date of the source. For example, Freud was the first person to study childhood dreams, open brackets. Freud, comma, 1906, close brackets. Okay? When compiling your reference list, it should be placed in alphabetical order with the author's surname, initial, followed by the year of publication in brackets, then the title, which should be underlined, and finally the city where the book was published along with the publisher's name. For example, Freud, S. 1920, A General Introduction to Psychoanalysis, New York, Bonnie, and Liveright. Okay, that's it. Please refer to your Red Book for more details.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.